Chapter 4 is called The Care and Feeding of a Dragon. Jessie took Emmy to the sink and washed her off. She splashed about in the water and held out her long pink tongue to catch droplets. "You're thirsty," Jessie said. He dried her off, then poured her a bowl of water. "Water," Jessie said, setting the bowl and the dragon in the center of the table. "Drink." "Water, good," Emmy said, and began to lap it up. She lifted her head up and let the water dribble down her throat. Then she set to lapping again. "Drink up," Jessie told her, "and don't move from this spot." "Emmy, drink," she gurgled. Keeping one eye on her, Jessie put everything back in the refrigerator and tackled the mess in her room. The kitchen was almost back to apple pie order when he noticed a rather large splat of relish on the ceiling. He sighed, climbed up onto the counter, and went at it. When the spot was finally gone, he climbed down and leaned against the counter. He couldn't remember when he had worked this hard. And they still had a hungry dragon to feed. Jessie looked around. The bowl of water was simply empty, but Emmy was nowhere in sight. Jessie heard Daisy switch off the vacuum cleaner upstairs. "Daisy," he called out, "is Emmy up there with you?" Daisy came pouring down the stairs and tore down the hall. "What do you mean? Where is she? Where'd she go?" "Look!" Jessie pointed to the wet claw marks on the clean floor. The cousins followed the track down the hall to the living room, where an aroma of hot chili peppers took them to where they were getting warmer. They heard a faint crunching coming from the wall of bookshelves. In front of the bookshelves were packed with boxes of rocks, all carefully labeled. Emmy was crouching in a box marked limestone, munching away on a small rock. Good," she said when she saw them. Her voice had gone all gruff and gravelly. "Uh-oh," said Daisy. Jessie regarded Emmy glumly. "Well, that's just dandy," he said. Now he had something new to worry about. How could eating a rock be good for baby anything? Even if rocks were good for baby dragons, she didn't have any teeth to grind them up with. What if she choked? And even if she didn't choke to death, what was Uncle Joe going to say with all his missing limestone? Daisy said, "Emmy, that's Poppy's limestone." "Emmy like rock," she said. The word rock seemed to be packing a few extra R's and K's. Daisy shrugged. "At least there's plenty more where that came from. And I can't say my mom is going to be upset at the reduction of rock population around here." Emmy swallowed, smacked her lips, and burped. A puff of stone dust floated out of her mouth like a ring. The baby dragon's hunger pangs quelled for the time being. Jessie and Daisy parked her in the sock drawer and went online to see what they could discover about the care and feeding of their dragon. "Google dragons," said Jessie. "Google dragons, Google dragons, Google dragon." Emmy babbled from the sock drawer. "That's what we're doing, Em," Jessie assured her. Then he groaned. Googling dragons got 36,100,000 hits. He scrolled through the first several screens. Half the listings seemed to be about the game Dungeons and Dragons. Other sites had to do with dragon legends, art, tattoos, or movies. "Not helpful," Jessie said, frowning at the screen. "We need to narrow this down." "Try dragon food," said Daisy. "Food," Emmy cooned from the sock drawer. The entry produced at least 3 million listings. Many for something called Bearded Dragon Medley. What's a bearded dragon? Daisy wanted to know. Jesse, who had owned many exotic pets in his far-off lands where he had lived, said, a lizard that's native to Australia. But I don't see anything here about feeding a real live dragon. I know, said Daisy, leaning over the back of the chair. Try Googling the time before. Jesse did that and counted 1,480,000,000 responses that started with the Big Bang and went on to the land before time. It would take us 5 years to go through all these, and then there would be 1,000,000 more. Daisy sighed. We'd better go to the library. Jesse pointed at the sock drawer. And we're taking her? You bet we are. Unless, of course, you came across any listings for dragon sitters, Jesse said with a smile. I guess I could carry her in the pouch of my sweatshirt, just like I did when she was inside the Thunder Egg, Jesse said as he switched off the computer and pulled on his hooded sweatshirt, thinking it was a good thing that early summers were cool. Come on, Emmy, he said, putting Daisy's purple knee sock on his hand and reaching into the drawer. Where go? Said Emmy, scrambling on board. We're taking a little trip, he told her. Little trip. Where? She wanted to know. Her eyes were swiveling in the search of this little trip. To find some stuff we need to know, he told her. Find some stuff, she asked. Her eyes were still searching. Yeah, about how to take care of you. Her eyes came to rest on him. Jesse, tiger, good, dragon, keeper. Jesse, tiger, dragon keeper. He liked the sound of that. Thanks, Emmy. Well, your dragon keeper says you need to stay undercover while we go out. Why for? She asked. We need to hide you, Daisy said. Emmy said, hide Emmy from bad man. There's no bad man. Flashing on the man in the $1 million car, Jesse wondered. At least I don't think there is. But it's important no one sees you. So you have to ride in the pouch of my sweatshirt, he told her, putting her gently in one side. Emmy quickly crawled out the other, scratching Jesse with her talons. Ouch! Emmy not like, she said, scrambling into his hand. No kidding. Maybe she'd rather ride in your hood, said Daisy. She got the other purple knee sock and pulled it over her hand. She took Emmy and held her, where they were nose to nose. Hey there, Emmy, Daisy said, smiling. Hey there, Daisy, Emmy said. I'm going to put you in the hood of Jesse's sweatshirt. You're going to be riding piggyback. And you have to try very hard not to scratch Jesse, okay? Piggyback. Okay, Daisy. Daisy put Emmy in Jesse's sweatshirt hood, and then hung down his back. Jesse felt the slight of weight of the dragon. You okay back there, he asked. Emmy, okay. Brilliant, said Jesse. Daisy's house was only a short distance from downtown Gold Mine City. That's where the library was. It was close enough to walk, but the cousins decided to ride their bikes there. Daisy had her own bike, and Jesse rode Noah's old blue 10-gear Schwinn. When he leaned over the handlebars to pedal, Jesse felt Emmy creep up his back and perch on his shoulder. Jesse and Daisy had agreed that if anyone saw Emmy, they would explain that she was a green basilic from Costa Rica. They figured this would work because A, she was nothing if not green, and B, who in Gold Mine City other than Jesse had any idea or have even seen a green basilic. It seemed as good as a story as any. The only hope no one would hear them talking. Like bike, like bike, like bike, Emmy said as they set out. Bikes are nifty, Jessie agreed. Bikes, nifty. Go, Jessie, go. She sure likes to talk, said Daisy. For Emmy's sake, they pedaled slowly as they could while keeping up their bikes. Emmy talked a mile a minute. Out of the corner of his eye, Jessie saw a head darting from left to right. Fairy? Emmy asked Jessie. Jessie flicked a look over his shoulder and saw that he was staring at the plaster figurine on the lawn. He grinned. That's not a fairy, just a statue. A garden gnome, he told her. A few seconds later, Emmy said, Cast, sell. They wheeled past a new big shingled house with a turret. No, said Jessie, not a castle, just a house. Then a car turned the corner up ahead and came down the street. It was the first moving car they had seen. Jessie said, Car. We use them to get places quick. Nostrils flaring, Emmy said, Smell. Like dragon piddle. The vehicle was practically on top of them when Jessie realized it was the $1 million car from the night before. He braked hard. Hi, he whispered to Emmy. She went as still as stone against his back. Jessie froze too as the car glided past. Moving only his eyes, he tried to look through the tinted windows, but couldn't see a thing. Daisy came circling back. What's up? She asked, braking in front of them. Jessie turned to stare at the car, then turned back to Daisy and was preparing to tell her about it when their friend Miss Elodie called out to them from the garden on the corner ahead. Yoo-hoo! Cousins! Hey, Miss Elodie! Daisy waved at her. Miss Elodie had the most beautiful garden in Gold Mine City, the envy of everyone who saw it. Miss Elodie's daisies were bigger than sunflowers. Her sunflowers were bigger than fruit trees, and her tree roses were as big as frisbees. Everything Daisy knew about flowers she learned from Miss Elodie. Jessie heard Emmy say, Garden gnome. Food. Miss Elodie was pruning a bush of giant yellow roses. She broke pink garden gloves, clunky sandals with socks, and plaid petals with pushers, and a flower-patterned blouse. Her green beanie, which reminded Jessie of the top of a zucchini with the stem still attached, came up only to Jessie's chin. She does look like a garden gnome, he thought. Good day, my young friends, Miss Elodie said. Her sparkling blue eyes were a perfect match for the paint and shutters of her cottage. Beautiful roses, Miss Elodie, said Daisy. Why, thank you. I like them too, said Miss Elodie. You know, roses are not native to Americans. They originally came from the Far East. Interesting, said Jessie. Food, Emmy asked. Daisy said, Jessie and I are making a museum of magic up at the barn. It's got a great section on wildflowers, and you're invited to visit. Just say the word and I'll be there with bells on, said Miss Elodie. Jessie felt a prickling on the back of his neck as Emmy scrambled out of his hood and perched on his shoulder. Land's sakes, said Miss Elodie. She came from behind a rose bush and planted her feet and tipped her head back to look at the baby dragon. Is that what I think it is? Emmy stared down at Miss Elodie and blinked. She's a green basilic from Costa Rica, Jessie said quickly. We found her at the dell. Is that a fact? Said Miss Elodie, her blue eyes dancing. She's certainly a long way from home, isn't she? Well, take good care of her. Keeping our pet is a responsibility. Don't take it lightly, my young friends. We won't, said Jessie. Then he gave Daisy a meaningful look and added, we have to get going. Now, right, Daisy? Right, said Daisy. We have some important research at the library. See you soon, Miss Elodie. I'll be seeing you two at the Museum of Magic, said Miss Elodie, returning to her rose bush. Nifty gnome, said Emmy. Uncle Joe liked to say that Gold Mine City needed a new name because the gold mine had been boarded up over a century and the town wasn't big enough to be called a village, much less a city. Jessie and Daisy rode down nearly an empty Main Street and chained their bikes to the rack in front of the library. Like the few other buildings in town, the library had stone pillars and a grand flight of steps. It was left over from the days when town had boomed. Jessie drew Daisy behind a tree and said to Emmy, there are no pets allowed at the library, so you need to stay in the back of my hood and not show your face. Library? Emmy asked, cocking her head. It's where we keep books and lots of knowledge, Jessie explained. And there's no yakking allowed in the library, said Daisy, because people want to read in peace and quiet. Read books? Scriptorium? Emmy said, her head bobbing rapidly. The cousins looked at each other and put the syllables together. Scriptorium, they chimed together. Then shrugged. Daisy led the way up the stairs. Just as Jessie was opening one of the library's double doors, Jessie caught a glimpse of what looked like the $1 million car reflected in the glass. He whipped around. It was just an ordinary dark green car. Jessie felt a little foolish. Probably someone who lives on our street and just bought a big black car, Jessie thought. I'm getting worked up for nothing. Miss Stenson, the weekday librarian, was seated at the desk. He smiled and he saw the cousins come in. How are my two most avid young readers, he said. In this computer-crazy world, I can't tell you how nice it is to see a couple of kids who still prefer an old-fashioned book. Jessie and Daisy exchanged a guilty look. What are you looking for today? Said Mr. Stenson. We've got the first book in a brand new fantasy trilogy. I think you're really going to like it. Is it about dragons? Jessie wanted to know. We're looking for books on dragons, Daisy told him. The librarian laughed and said, you and every other kid in the world. Which one? We have lots of books about dragons. Oh, anything dragonish to be exact, said Daisy. Dragon stories, dragon legends, dragon operating instructions. Jessie trailed off. You kids are in luck. Just the other day I made up a list of dragon books in our collection, said the librarian. He opened a file folder and shuffled through some pages till he found what he was looking for. He gave a quick look and smiled. There's some great reads, he said. Emmy must have disagreed with the librarian because she blew in Jessie's ear and whispered, Dragon Piddle. Jessie started coughing to hide his laughter, giving a little hop to shake Emmy down in his hood. Thanks a lot, Mr. Stenson, he said. Mr. Stenson's nose twitched. Do you two smell something? He asked. The cousins looked at Mr. Stenson, their eyes wide. I don't smell anything. Do you, Daisy? Said Jessie. No, said Daisy. Strange, said the librarian. Not quite sure what it is. He lifted his nose in the air and sniffed. Burritos? Tacos? Salsa, maybe? Sounds great to me, said Jessie. Yeah, said Daisy. When do we eat? Mr. Stenson grinned. You probably just my hungry tummy, manufacturing appetizing aromas. "This list looks great," said Jessie. "Can we keep it?" said Daisy. "Be my guest, and happy reading." After thanking him again, the cousins went to their regular table in the kids' section. They huddled around, running their eyes on the list. It filled an entire sheet of paper. "I've got a plan," said Daisy. She folded the piece of paper in two and ripped the edge against the table. She handed Jessie half. "You hunt those, I'll get the rest. We'll pile the books up on the table and figure out which ones to check out first." Luckily, the plan soon put Emmy to sleep. Whether it was from the peace and quiet of the library or the steady plodding through the stacks, Jessie didn't care. He was just grateful. When Jessie and Daisy had finished hunting and gathering, they had a small mountain of books on their table. "Okay, Daisy, let's set the ones that seem like they might give us useful facts on the right and the ones that are just made-up stuff on the left." They went through the books with surprising speed. When they were finished, they had no books on the right and a huge stack on the left. They were all probably perfectly wonderful books. It just was that, from the cousins could tell, they didn't contain much of any practical advice on how to care and feed a baby dragon. "What about this one?" Jessie said, pointing to the last title on Daisy's half of the list. It wasn't in the pile. "The Dragon Keeper's Guide." "Yeah, that's because it wasn't on the shelf. And the funny thing is," she added, "it's the only book that was actually listed as non-fiction." They returned to Mr. Stenson's desk and asked him about the missing book. He looked up on his computer and quickly confirmed that the only copy was checked out and overdue. "That book's long out of print," he said. The cousins went over to the computerized card catalog to look up The Dragon Keeper's Guide. The author was listed as Professor L.B. Anderson, D.D., Doctor of Dragonology. The book was published in 1877. "It's old," said Daisy. "What's in it?" Jessie leaned towards the screen and read the small print aloud. "Hatchlings, younglings, hoarding, scrying, masking, flaming, soaring, spelling, dreaming. The time before." There it was on the screen in black and white. The time before. After swiftly returning the books to the shelves, the cousins flew home and dashed upstairs to the computer. With Daisy standing behind the chair, Jessie Googled Professor L.B. Anderson. Only 4 hits. The first 3 were about a book, which seemed to be the only one the man had ever written, or at least the only one Mr. Google knew anything about. Next to the 4th entry was a website listed. The site was called www.foundadragon.org. Jessie clicked on the link and the home page came up. On the left side of the screen was a black and white drawing of a dragon, looking very old. On the right was a photograph of a stern-looking man with white hair, long beard, and mustache, white eyebrows bristling over his black eyes. Jessie didn't know what to do, so he clicked on the old man's face and was startled when the photograph suddenly came to life. The dark eyes blazed, and the nose twitched, and the mouth beneath the mustache opened and began to speak. "So, you think you found a dragon?" it boomed at them. And that's the end of our chapter today. Chapter 5 tomorrow is called The Sorcerer's Sphere.